Politics is basically just a game, and I think I've gotten kind of disgusted. I've always been disgusted with politics. Somewhere along the line, I actually became interested because I realized that it has its importance on more of an ego level. And basically, I've been realizing recently that I've kind of lost track with the real purpose of why I started making these videos of mine, and that is to speak from a deeper level, preferably as much as possible from the psychic, spiritual. My last video, which I still agree with, I don't take anything back with that, but that was from a perspective of us as a human race, and how, maybe we're evolving quickly, but it's not something that's just going to happen that all of a sudden 2012, boom, all of a sudden we're much more evolved. That's ridiculous. I mean, that's like, imagine taking a small child who's like 7 years old and then turning him into a 27-year-old man, in body and in terms of hormones and in terms of his brain and intellect. He's an adult. But could you imagine that? The confusion, the psychological confusion. He wouldn't have gone through all the trials and tribulations that would have allowed him to grow in the spiritual sense, for his ego to grow, the ego self to grow and adapt to become a man. So he wouldn't really be a man. You cheated him out of the growing. That's why we say that it's the journey that matters. It's not ending up where you end up. It's the journey, because the journey is the growth. And basically, that is the adventure of life. And as you grow as an individual, as you grow as a family and as a bloodline, and as we grow as a culture, and as we grow as a race, this is how it basically works. So I was making that point, which is true, but there's another perspective, a deeper perspective on this, and that is at the same time that we are a human race of physical beings and egos, with the spiritual understanding of the ego, we are also purely spiritual beings, the psychic self, the true self, that operates on a deeper psychological level. And it's entirely possible to have a real spiritual awakening. That would mean that physically and intellectually we would evolve, but at a quicker rate. But we are definitely missing a spiritual evolution. Philosophers have been discussing for centuries now, why is it that we are becoming so left side of the brain, it's so well developed, and the sciences, and technology, and on the right side of the brain, though, in terms of understanding, like the wisdom, the actual maturity of what we are doing, that isn't developing. How come we're so technologically ahead of ourselves? How come the intellect is so far ahead of our basic wisdom and common sense? That doesn't make sense. But that is how it's been happening. We've gotten way ahead of ourselves, and that may lie in our competitive nature, the competitive side of human nature. I believe there are various other reasons for it as well. Certainly the occult use mystical findings. I say findings because there is no ultimate answers, as I explained, that are in some secret vault somewhere. Everyone just has little bits and pieces of information, and they're trying to piece it all together. Not everyone, but those who are interested in the truth. But, it's all basically just a game anyway. I've had different people, point that out to me, and it's becoming increasingly clear that they're right. And it's just a game. Some of us who are more, I don't know how to put it, serious or, interested in actual truth, have trouble understanding how people could live their lives like a game, how people could be involved in running of other people's lives and cultures like a game. We're way too, I don't know what to call it, what to say, respectable, considerate, logical, to think that way, to have that kind of mentality. But this is the way the world basically works. Politics is a game. Anyway, I'm sick of it. I always hated politics, and hell, I was right. It's a load of BS, and I think I've pretty much had it with going into that. So, I don't know if I'm going to remove a couple of my political videos in a little while or not. I don't know. But I think I've had it with politics, and I've also had it with discussing things on a more ego level. And I think I'm just going to return to reading poems and doing what I'm doing now, which is speaking at least on the behalf of the psychic self, and not getting into the ego level debates and ramblings and whatnot. It's not that I don't enjoy a good debate or anything. It's just that I don't feel that's my real strength, and I feel like ultimately that's a waste of time, just going in circles. So I like to return to the more spiritual and mystical, and trying to inspire people on a deeper level of consciousness, as that was basically my original intention. I just want to add a couple of points. For one thing, I've mentioned before that the true self is really the only truth that you'll probably find in this world. I don't know of any other than the connections that we have to each other, and the connections that we have to the light or God or whatever you want to call it. But the true self is the only centered truth that you can truly find, I think, in this world. At some stage we may be so evolved that we may be the true self, and as a human collective we may be much more true of nature, of consciousness, and that would be a very different experience than the one that we are having. But like I say, that's going to take a very, very long time if we ever reach that. So basically the psychic self is the true self, and everything else is illusion. We are living in a kind of holographic reality here. It's all energy. We interpret it as something more physical and more literal than what it really is. And if you've ever had a spiritual awakening, which is to wake out of the ego self, the ego state of mind, into the psychic self, the true self, or a higher level of other level of spiritual consciousness, you'll realize that life is basically just a dream, and you're taking it too literally. So I hope I wasn't too confusing here. It could be confusing to understand the difference between two selves, the ego self and the spirit self, the psychic self. They are different, and you can become the psychic self, aware in the psychic self, away from the body. But when you return to the body, you may be more involved in the spiritual sense, but you're still you still have your limitations, you still have your problems, your obstacles in life. So I mean, it's not going to evolve you up to some kind of God level to have a spiritual experience, a spiritual awakening.